Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's action meeting. We're going to start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. We don't have a video tonight, so.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I'd like to announce that the board and the administration met in executive session this evening from 6:30 to 7:30 to discuss matters of personnel and potential litigation. Moving on then to the audience of citizens. For anyone who wishes to speak, this meeting is being videotaped for community cable channels. Individuals attending this meeting and intending to speak to the board should be aware that they are being videotaped. In order to meet the requirements of Pennsylvania's Sunshine Law, it is necessary to record the names of all citizens who speak to the board during the meeting. To ensure compliance with this requirement, it is essential that those planning to address the board come to the microphone, state their name and address, and sign the audience of citizens logbook. Members of the audience are asked to limit their questions and comments. To allow time for all those who wish to speak to the board president may ask an individual to yield the microphone to the next speaker. So with that, if there's anyone who would like to make public comment? Seeing none, we will move on then to the approval of the minutes from January 17th, 2019 action meeting. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Ramich, seconded by Mr. Fusco. Are there any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on then to the committee reports. Our personnel committee meeting was scheduled for last Tuesday, and it was canceled due to the inclement weather. So we have not yet rescheduled that meeting as of today. So, moving on then to finance. Mr. Diazio is not here this evening, so Mr. Fusco, would you mind reading the
Sure.
report? Okay.
Update from our regular meeting of February 4th, 2019. The monthly financial reports were reviewed with additional discussion on the following items. The 2019-2020 Montgomery County Intermediate Unit Budget, the MCIU proposed budget was reviewed. The MCIU board has already approved the budget, so each district now needs to approve. North Penn share is $211,747, which is a 0.91% increase over the current year. 2019-2020 North Monco Technical Career Center budget. The proposed budget was reviewed along with the calculation formula for the tuition. North Penn's share of tuition for next year is projected to be $3,801,019, which is a 3.08% increase. North Penn also pays a share of debt service in the amount of $316,370. The Joint Operating Committee will be reviewing the budget in February, and the North Penn Board will consider in March. Department level budget presentation was given. Presentations were made from Human Resources, Curriculum, and Special Education for the 2019-2020 budget. There was a debt service presentation. Mr. Skoraki reviewed the results from the 2019 bond issue, as well as the current outstanding bond issues and lease payments. The 2019-2020 preliminary budget was introduced, and Mr. Skoraki provided an overview of the preliminary budget. Highlights of the budget were discussed, as well as the application process for Act 1 exceptions for special education and retirement. Mr. Skoraki emphasized it is early in the budget process, and many things will change prior to May when the proposed final budget is considered. Items recommended for action tonight: the 2019-2020 Montgomery County Intermediate Unit Budget. It appears on tonight's agenda. The North Penn preliminary budget for 2019-2020, also on tonight's agenda, and the North Monco Technical Career Center budget will appear on the March action meeting agenda. Our next meeting, the next regular Finance Committee meeting will be held on Tuesday, March 12th, 2019 at 6:00 p.m. at the ESC. There will be a special Finance Committee meeting held on Monday, March 4th, 2019 at 6:00 here at the ESC. End of report.
Thank you, Mr. Fusco. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, moving on then to the Safe Schools Committee meeting. Mr. Costa is not here this evening, so I'll read off that report. Mr. Dorr reviewed the prior year's safe school activities along with the proposed initiatives for the next year. Mr. Dorr gave an update on the Safe Schools grants. North Penn was awarded $45,000, which will be used for behavioral threat assessment, a climate survey, and bleeding control kits. The Act 44 Part B grant application is being revised based on the new state guidance. The Safe to Say program went live on January 14th, 2019. One tip has been received and was handled by the school team. The training for students in 7th through 12th grade is planned for late February. The next Safe Schools Committee meeting will be held on Tuesday, February 26th, 2019 at 6:00 p.m. at the ESC. Does anyone have any comments or questions? Okay, moving on then to the Education, Community, and Policy.
The Education Community Policy Committee met on January 22nd, 2019. Ms. Scott presented recommendations for changes to extended care enrollment options for the 2019-2020 school year. This was moved forward for discussion by the full board and is on tonight's agenda. Student travel information for overnight trips was presented and reviewed by committee members. Dr. Santoro, Ms. Swavely, Ms. Rubo, Ms. Johnson, and Mr. Mueller provided an update on the implementation of school-wide positive behavior and supports program. This year, 3 elementary schools are engaged in the readiness year that occurs prior to implementation. NAP implemented the program this year and has seen a significant decline in behavioral referrals as a result. Mr. Hassler and Mr. Brett presented information regarding the opportunities available to students through the College and Career Center as they prepare for life following graduation from North Penn High School. Dr. Rufo presented updates regarding the cultural proficiency work taking place in the district. The ECP meeting next ECP meeting will be on Tuesday, February 26th, 2019 at 6:30 p.m. Any questions?
I'm just wondering about the, if we have a rescheduled date for the parent.
The parent meeting.
Yes. The rescheduled date is March 7th. It's from 6:15 to 8:15, and everyone who was previously involved did receive an invitation inviting them and giving them the updated date.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, end of report.
Thank you, Mr. Fusco. Support Services. That's Mr. Costa as well, so I'll take that. The committee discussed a proposal to determine the cost to install synthetic turf on the North Penn High School baseball and softball fields. This item is on tonight's agenda. The committee discussed a name change for this committee. The new name will be the Facilities and Operations Committee. Mr. Kennedy shared the results for drinking water testing. We've received results for 8 buildings, which included 146 samples. 3 samples exceeded the EPA threshold. Those 3 locations have been turned off and will be retested. If the second test is above the limit, the fixture will be replaced. What's it?
I think you missed some of this.
Oh, yeah, I did. Okay, sorry. All right, so Mr. Kennedy reviewed 2 credit change orders for Oak Park HVAC project, along with a change order to Bonet Associates for additional design work for structural steel modifications. Mr. Kennedy presented a design proposal from the Schrader Group to replace the roof on Nash Elementary School. This item is on tonight's agenda. The committee reviewed a design proposal from Snyder Hoffman to replace the rooftop HVAC unit for the Pembroke Library. This item is on tonight's agenda. Dave Schrader shared some options for building a 9th grade center at the North Penn High School. The committee also discussed modular classrooms located at several schools. Several meetings were held with various stakeholders. The grade reconfiguration decision will determine where modulars may be removed or replaced. The committee reviewed a proposal for an engineering study to determine the cost of air conditioning to the middle schools. And then that's it. The next Support Services Committee meeting is scheduled for Monday, February 25th, 2019 at 6 p.m. at the ESC. Any questions?
Question. Mr. Kennedy, the water testing, if it fails, it's the appliance that has to be replaced?
We'll replace the appliance, retest again, and then if it's over the limit again, we have to start investigating behind the wall if it's a piping or some other source.
Okay,
So it's a step-by-step process. We start at the fixture
Okay.
first.
All right, I understand. Okay. And it's the next, what is it? What's the new name of the committee?
Facilities and Operations.
It's the Facilities and Operations Committee that will have their next meeting on Monday, the 25th.
Correct.
Yes, no, so
Yes.
the next supports are.
Yes. All right. Are there any other questions? All right, moving on then to the North Monco Technical Career Center. Ms. Ott?
North Montague's Technical Career Center, JOC, last met on January 23rd. The JOC voted to approve many personnel motions, which are listed here. Student travel as well as staff travel, budget transfers, a bid that was awarded for a 72-passenger school bus, and we accepted some donations and acknowledged those. There was also a first reading of board policies 100 and 115. The next JOC meeting was scheduled for tomorrow. We have rescheduled it in lieu of the weather to next Wednesday. End report.
Thank you, Ms. Ott. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, then we'll move on to the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit. Mrs. Ramich?
Great. The MCIU board met on January 23rd, where we received information on programs including early intervention programs such as Head Start and pre-K counts, and professional development services delivered in the previous quarter, legislative happenings at the federal and state level, and an overview of recently completed independent audit and a preliminary discussion of the 2019-2020 member service budget. The next meeting of the MCIU board will meet on February 27th, where we will actually be meeting at the Early Learning Academy, which is slated for renovation. End of report.
Thank you, Mrs. Ramich. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Moving then on to the North Penn Educational Foundation. Ms. Ott?
The Foundation Board of Trustees met last on February 6th. The Foundation's treasurer reviewed the current financial statement, and we were pleased to report that the Foundation raised more money this past year than ever before at more than $163,000. The Foundation has come a long way in 20 years when just over $10,000 was typically raised each year. Trustees considered two proposals from district staff who presented their ideas. The foundation approved supporting another event in the North Penn Talk series. Ron James, a 1981 graduate of North Penn High School, will speak to the students at the high school about making right choices and the consequences of poor decisions. He will also have an evening presentation for students in other grades and parents. A date has not yet been set, but we'll keep you posted. The foundation also agreed to support the integrated science program at the middle school level in terms of helping students who can't afford the supplies needed for independent research projects. Specifics on this are still being worked out. In addition to this, the foundation approved 33 mid-year grants this past December, totaling $22,441. Grant applications for the 2019-2020 school year will be accepted beginning in March. Coming soon is the foundation's annual online auction, which will be held in May. Between now and then, we're looking for community members and businesses to donate any items to this popular fundraising effort. Our next meeting is Wednesday, March 6th at 7:45 in the morning here at the ESC. End of report.
Thank you, Ms. Ott. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, then we will move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Dietrich.
Thank you. I recommend approval of the extended care program items for 2019-20 year, namely the extended school care rates, the summer camp rates, the elimination of the flexible schedule option, the elimination of the 2-day schedule option, elimination of the 3-day schedule option, and amending the snow early dismissal policy so the program will not operate when schools are dismissed early due to snow.
Do I have a motion? Do I have a second? Anyone? Second? Motion by Mrs. Perkowski, seconded by Ms. Ott. Are there
Okay, we
any-
do have a presentation that we would make this evening, and Margie Scott, our coordinator of extended school care, will make that presentation.
Okay. I am very short, so you have to let me know if you can hear. So the purpose of our proposal here is to really maximize the number of children that we're going to be able to offer care to in the coming year with the concern of the full-day kindergarten being implemented. We're also looking to examine the inclement weather dismissal practices in consideration of student safety. Okay, so currently, we offer a flexible schedule option, which is 2 to 4 days. There is a premium above the additional fee that's charged, and the downside of that is it occupies a 5-day slot, and I'm sorry, I'm not sure.
We have some remote participation. I gather somebody must have just gotten on now. Do we have confirmation of that?
Yes, they're already, we can work on using that method.
Right. So Mr. Casa is out of town, but he's participating remotely.
Okay.
If you can mute the mic, perhaps he already got that.
Okay.
Make sure you put it back on, though, when you want to ask questions and vote, though.
Okay.
That's what they told me. Okay.
Super. So I was talking about the flexible schedule option that we offer currently. Only 27 out of our 800 students that were enrolled in September use that option. And so, again, it occupies a full slot. We're looking to move away from that so that we can offer the slots to other incoming students. We offer currently 2 days. People can pick from 2 mornings, 2 afternoons, or 2 mornings and afternoons, and that's only 51 students out of the 800 from September that selected that. There are 102 that were using the 3-day. Okay. The 4-day we were proposing to keep, and that would give some people an option to go up to. 75 students select that, and then we have a 5-day option. 544 students out of 800 that enrolled in September used that option. The full day care option is offered to anyone in the program, and additional mornings and afternoons can also be purchased on a space available basis. Just to give you a little background of the program, in this current school year, we enrolled 150 first grade students. Next school year, we're expecting to have 150 kindergartners and 150 first grade students that are attempting to enroll. We only have 101 sixth grade students this year that will be leaving us for middle school. We do follow the Department of Human Services child care regulations, and there's some other information there about ratios and staffing that we need to follow.
So I'm following the last slides. It showed that there's a total of about 800 kids that are participating? Is that
We
right?
had 800 start out in September.
Okay.
As you go through the year, people drop out or drop down a
Is
little
that
bit.
like a maximum number? Is there,
We do have a maximum at some schools, and I'm going to click to the next screen, which is waiting lists, which is what we're really concerned about, having a whole lot of waiting lists. This year, we started out with waiting lists at a number of schools. We still continue to have waiting lists at some schools. The big schools for waiting lists are Bridle Path, Gwynnor, Gwinnett Square, and Montgomery. And they still have 10 to 26, in some cases, families on the waiting list. We haven't had a lot of movement at those buildings, people dropping out. Any questions?
no, the 27 slots that are currently being occupied by students using the flexible schedule, they are preventing 27 other full-time students from being able to fill those slots?
So what
because
the
of-
27 does is people can have a flexible schedule. So
Right.
most of them pick a low number, 2 to 3 days.
Right.
So you have to, at minimum, select, I want 2 flexible mornings, and you can call in the week before and give us your schedule. But the way you do that is you have to reserve a full slot. So you can't slot anybody else into their off days because the schedule's changing.
Well, couldn't they, in theory, pick their days and just be stuck with the days they choose?
Hence why we're proposing that we get rid of the flexible option,
But it also means that they would have to pay for 5 days.
if that was the option they wanted, yes.
Like if they
Or they could pick set days.
But they could pick, say, oh, I will be as every Monday and Wednesday, and they could have a 2-day, then it's just on Mondays and Wednesdays. It's not like eliminating the ability to have 2 days, it's just eliminating the The
If
ability
we
to-
get rid of the flexible option.
To get rid of the flexible option of
Only,
whatever
right.
days those are.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
For clarity on that one,
Sure.
okay.
So, okay, because maybe I misunderstood then. So
Yeah.
is it, I thought we were getting rid of the flexible option as in it was a 5-day or a 4-day. They could not choose 2 or 3 days. No?
That's one of the options.
Right.
If we got rid of the flexible option, we would be getting rid of the ability for them to choose 2 or 3 days. Am I
No,
stating it correctly?
the flexible option's a separate thing. So if we're going to get rid of a flexible schedule,
So I guess like to be super clear here.
Yeah.
Right? I'm okay saying, no, you need to pick your days.
Right.
I'm not really okay saying, we're never gonna take anybody because they only need 2 days, right?
Right.
So there is an option for us to say.
sure, absolutely.
Okay. You just can't switch up, which is fine, honestly. I don't know, that seems very flexible to me.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
You said there's a week for parents to let the district know when their students are coming in?
They have to tell us by Friday for the upcoming
Friday, the
week
week
what their
before.
schedule is so that we know when to expect them.
Certain jobs now, according to the state, I think there's a new law that says you have to have your schedule, certain jobs, 2 weeks before. The set schedule, folks like waitresses and wait staff and folks like that. If we pushed it back to 2 weeks, could we maybe deal a little bit better with that kind of information? Would that help at all, or?
Really, we're just trying to maximize the number of slots.
Okay.
And children we can stick in and.
Okay.
See,
Also,
the
cool.
So,
the
I mean,
problem
I-
is you commit
okay.
that slot, and some people use it very minimally. And there are others on waiting lists, and they're anticipating a large waiting list because now we're going to full-day K. So that's the issue. Do we want to continue the practice to give either A, maximum flexibility, or B, take away the flexibility but still keep the 2-day option, the 3-day option, the 4-day option, the 5-day option? Or do we want to start to restrict some of those lesser-used options so that we have more people who really do want 5 days because they have,
Yeah.
or 4 days? I think Margie's recommendation was to keep the 4-day option. So the 4 and the 5, but that would cut out those that are using the 2 or the 3. Otherwise, though, then the other option is you do nothing, or you do only a part of this, and then you have people who want 4 or 5 days who will be on a waiting list and can't get in, and we're expecting that number to grow.
How long
What-
is the waiting list at the moment?
If you look behind you there,
Okay.
it varies by school. Gwen-Nor, again, Gwinnett Square, Bridle Path, and Montgomery, traditionally and are, at this time, the ones with the largest waiting lists.
Do you know offhand which of those schools use the flexible option more predominantly?
It's scattered. It's not, there's
like-
not a pocket anywhere.
What percentage of the families utilize subsidies in our program?
We have about 25 that are eligible for subsidy.
And do we have any numbers as to how this would impact them? For example, if they only are approved for subsidy for 2 days a week, because that's when a single mom works or goes to school, is she now going to have to pay for 4 days a week, and she would have to pay the remaining amount out of her pocket? So do we have any information on how that will impact the families who are paying, who receive
Sure.
subsidy?
Most of the families are 5-day that are subsidy. There is one that is 2-day. The rest are 4 and 5-day.
The space concerns are primarily like kindergarten coming in next year because it'll be full.
Well,
right?
as I said, this last school year, we got about 110 new first graders, so we're expecting really to
I
double.
think it'll be even more.
That, it's a concern.
Yeah.
We want to be able to accommodate as many children as possible, and
Is it a space or a staffing concern?
it is both. The state requires that you have 40 square feet per children. There has to be a certain number of restroom facilities for each child, not each child, but for the group
For
of
the group.
children.
And then staffing, we'll talk a little bit about that, the ratios, and then the problems with that.
We follow the 1 to 12 ratio for the K through 3rd grade students. If you have a separate group of 4th, 5th, and 6th grade students, you can go to a 1 to 15 ratio. But if they're all combined, at some of the smaller schools, they're all together, you have to go with the 1 to 12. To to be quite honest, hiring people for 2 and 3 hours has been difficult. The economy is very good right now, and it has been a challenge to get more staff, so we certainly don't want to take in new children before we have the staff that can accommodate them.
I guess my concern is we, focus on equity and giving families what they need in our district, is that we're striving to be flexible and family-friendly to all different types of families, the single mom or who works a job where she only finds out a week out which days she has to work late. And this moves away from that. From what I can see, when I looked at Central Bucks and I looked at Hatboro, Horsham, two of the surrounding districts, I was really looking at Central Bucks because they're similar, at least in size. They're more flexible than we are. So we actually are kind of right in the middle because you can go down to 4 days a month with them. And so I don't know that I would want to support moving away from being flexible with our families.
Right, and there is a chart at the end, and you guys can certainly look at that as well. We did survey the school districts in Montgomery County, very simply on what they offer and what they do when it snows, and that data is there.
So as I'm looking at this, most of the districts in Montgomery County don't offer care. They're dependent on the YMCA. So we're really looking at Hatboro, Horsham, Colonial, it looks like. Is that right?
There are a number that have their own
And-
programs. Cheltenham has their own. Upper Marion, Upper Moreland.
Okay.
And there's certainly probably at least half that use the YMCA.
Thank you for looking into that and providing
You're
that
welcome.
information. It's definitely helpful for us to make a decision.
Okay. Any more questions about the program options? Okay, I'm just going to go back if I can get this to cooperate. We also were proposing for snow early dismissals that for student, parent, and staff safety, that when schools are dismissed, that we do not offer the afternoon program. Again, I guess it's, Kurt, I don't know if you wanted to address it, but once school's dismissed.
Presently, we do continue to have the program operating. Of course, the concern is the safety of our students and their ability then to safely get home from our program, with their parents in their car, and it's a concern. So to continue to do that, we do have kids who are now 1 to 2 hours later entering out into those conditions, and it's just, a concern for us.
Can you go back to the chart?
Absolutely.
It looks like about half of those school districts do have the care for 2 hours after dismissal for snow. Right, because
Yeah,
I'm thinking
it's
like
fair
if
to
somebody
say.
like works down the city, might be hard to get back in time.
I think about parents that also use public transportation, have to wait on someone else's schedule. And I worry about what that impact on their flexibility is.
Kyle, this is a item that is all or nothing for the vote, correct?
The motion that was made and seconded is the recommended action item as it's currently drafted. Certainly, there could be a
Vote to-
motion to amend the current item, but as it stands, it's the entire item.
Okay.
Okay. And yeah, just to say additionally, we were looking to set our summer camp rates at $271, which is a 2.3% increase over last year. And then the same for the fees, a 2.3% increase over this year.
So Kyle, do we vote to have an amendment? Is that what we do?
Well, someone would have to make a
Motion
move
or-
to amend the current item if there's a desire for that.
Yeah, because there's a motion on the floor already, so.
I would move to amend the current item to remove the, to have the pickup be 2 hours after dismissal, which is what it is now, correct?
Correct.
And to keep the current policy regarding flexibility with the days.
So just to be,
Want to keep that in this?
No, I'm saying, I guess,
Separate out the
yeah,
snow vote
and the
flexibility vote.
flexibility.
And let the budgets be separate, right?
Yes,
That would make more sense. It seems like the questions are not with the budgets.
right. I would, I guess, move to amend it so that you take out the recommendation for 5 and 4 days, the recommendation for that change in our policy, and the
So-
recommendation for the snow change.
okay, so just to be clear, in terms of the recommended item, your proposed amendment is to keep if we go through the items that are listed in the action, keep extended school care rates, keep summer camp rates, but elimination of the flexible schedule option, elimination of the 2-day schedule option, elimination of the 3-day schedule option, and amending the snow early dismissal policy so the program will not operate when schools are dismissed early due to snow. Is that accurate?
Yes, meaning when you said eliminate the current recommendation.
Remove that language from the
Right, okay.
proposed motion.
And then
Yes.
make them a different item.
Well, that would be a separate action
Or
that
separate
the board could take if a separate motion were to be made.
Or just table it.
But-
What's the timeline if we wanted to, again, table that, or should we just go ahead and vote tonight? Because it's not new for me and Alicia. There are some other board members here that it is a little bit new to, so
Right.
I'm not sure where we are
Again,
on
we're
it.
just concerned, registration's coming up, starting
coming
in
up,
in
so
April.
it's
If there
really-
is a change, we want to let parents
Let
know,
parents
in
know.
all fairness.
Yeah, no, it's-
And again, we're just really concerned with trying to minimize waiting lists and
Yes.
maximize the number of children we can get in.
So just to be clear, there's a motion that's been made to amend the current motion to eliminate the language with regard to flexible schedules, scheduling options, and the snow day. So basically adjusting the motion so that it currently would include extended school care rates and summer camp rates, correct?
Yes.
But to clarify, Ms. Scott, do you have, where will we find, if that motion were to pass, where will we find the extended school care rates for the 2-day option, the 3-day option, the
Okay.
flexible schedule option?
So I will need to add those back in at the 2.3% increase, and we certainly will do that based on the current
So I think that
rates.
has to be clear also, because if
Okay,
we didn't develop those rates when we put it in the extended school care rates.
okay.
So basically, we're just voting on the price increase, the budget, right?
We could vote for a percentage increase to the current rates.
Absolutely.
The current 2- and 3-day rates, so that we would be covered for that, so that you could begin registration.
And is that increase the same for the extended school care rates and the summer camp rates?
Yes,
It's a standard, and what is that amount?
it's 2.3%.
So the proposed amendment is to approve the extended school care program rates with an increase of 2.3%,
Yes.
and without any language regarding flexible scheduling options or snow dismissal.
Right.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor,
Okay, so do I?
and there's a second.
All right.
So now there can be debate with regard to the motion to amend.
All right, does anyone have any comments or questions about the motion to amend? No? Okay, then, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay. So motion carries, so that, just the budget part.
That amended the motion, so now we are with the motion on the table is approving the program, extended school care program with a 2.3% increase to the rates for summer camp and extended school care.
All right, and I already had a motion and a second from the original,
That's correct.
so I don't have to do that. Okay. So any comments or questions on that? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay.
Yeah.
I got you, Chair.
I like what you put in there.
All right. All right, motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, the recommended action is to recommend approval of the gifts to the district as listed for February 21st, 2019.
Do I have a motion? Motion by Mrs. Prokowski and seconded by Mr. Fusco. Any comments or questions? Ms. Ott?
Thank you.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Recommend approval of overnight student travel as listed.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Fusco and seconded by Mrs. Prokowski. Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Recommend approval of the attached stipulation agreement to settle the tax assessment appeal against Lowe's Home Centers Incorporated concerning the property located at 630 Cowpath Road, and that the board president be authorized to execute the stipulation agreement.
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Prokowski and seconded by Mrs. Ramich. Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Recommend approval of the attached stipulation agreement to settle the tax assessment appeal by TFJR Associates LP concerning the properties located at 981 North Wales Road, 983 North Wales Road, 755 Bethlehem Pike, and that the board president be authorized to execute the stipulation agreement.
Do I have a motion? Second? Do it. Motion by Mrs. Prokowski and seconded by Mr. Fusco. Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
I recommend approval to advertise for bid for the sale of obsolete technology equipment.
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Prokowski and seconded by Mrs. Ramich. Any comments or questions?
How do we do that? How do we sell it? Just curious.
We actually do it just like a bid, so vendors can submit a bid on the obsolete equipment.
Like as a whole or an individual? No, just curious. Okay.
Do we do that every year?
About once every 2 years.
Yeah.
Our goal is that we don't have to pay to have it removed.
It's a good goal. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Recommend approval of the contracts for the district as listed for February 21st, 2019, copies of which are on file in the business office.
Do I have a motion?
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Ramich, seconded by Mrs. Prokowski. Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Recommend the approval of a credit change order to Donald Riesinger on the Oak Park HVAC project for steel revisions, overtime, and shelving relocation in a credit amount of $10,799.82. Furthermore, recommend the approval of a credit change order to Matchline Mechanical on the Oak Park HVAC project for overtime reimbursement in a credit amount of $1,274.38. And furthermore, recommend the approval of additional design work to Bennett Associates on the Oak Park and Gwynnor HVAC projects in the amount of $7,132.
Do I have a motion?
Second.
Motion by Mr. McBain and seconded by Mrs. Prokowski. Any comments or questions? Mr. Kennedy, is that the last of the bills then for the Oak Park and Gwynnor HVAC project?
Hopefully that's last of the change orders, but there's still some outstanding bills with other contractors. We're waiting for some punch list work and the commissioning of the project. So the projects aren't closed out yet.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
So we have the matter of the propane bus bids, and I'll make the recommended action, and if we get a motion in a second, I'll have Mr. Scrocky summarize the very latest in that. So recommend that approval.
Motion by Mr. Fusco. Do I have a second? Seconded by Mr. McBain.
Mr. Scrocky, can you summarize the propane bus situation?
Absolutely. We issued a bid for 10 propane buses. You might recall that we received a grant from the Pennsylvania Driving Forward program. We basically received 50% reimbursement for the cost of the buses. So we issued a bid for 10 buses. 6 were 48-passenger wheelchair buses, and the remaining 4 were for microbuses. So everything was fine with the 6. So we're recommending approval for the 6 48-passenger wheelchair buses tonight. That total is $580,650 to the low bidder, which is Brightbill Body Works Incorporated. They manufacture the Bluebird buses.
The what?
Bluebird buses. The other 4 are somewhat problematic because the low bidder did not meet the specifications. In particular, the specifications with respect to our delivery date. Okay, the delivery date, I think, was somewhere around June the 5th of this year. And that date was important because in order to be eligible for that PA Driving Forward grant, you needed to take delivery by a certain date. They cannot guarantee delivery by that date. So we have been in contact, or trying to contact, I should say, the administrators of the PA Driving Forward program to see if they'll issue a waiver. So if we receive the buses in August, we'll still receive the funding. That question has not been answered. So what we're going to do is hold off on the 4 microbuses for now, and perhaps next month, when we have an answer, we'll ask for a bid award next month. If the grant administrator says, sorry, you can't meet the deadline, you have to start all over the grant process, then we'll recommend that you reject the bid for the 4 microbuses. The way the bid specifications were worded, the bids are valid for a period of 60 days, so we do have time to award the bid. We just need clarification from the grant administrator to make sure a late delivery in August is still going to make us eligible for the funding.
Okay.
So to summarize then, the recommendation is to award a bid to Brightbill for 6 48-passenger buses in the amount of $580,650.
Do we have any more comments or questions? I have one. What is a microbus exactly?
It's just a smaller bus.
Half a bus.
I think the
Half a
seating
bus.
capacity for that is in the 20s, I don't recall the exact number.
Okay. All right.
There's, I'm sorry, 4 of those? Is that because of cost? Is that because of, that's just where our need is more
Yeah, based-
predominantly?
Based on need, right.
Based on need,
We started
okay.
out with these 10. You might also recall that we're planning on applying for more grant money.
Right.
You can only receive 10 grants at a time. These are actually 10 separate grants, not one grant for 10, but 10 individual grants. So this is where the greatest need was. So once we satisfy the requirements of these 10, where we receive the buses and we take 10 buses out of commission, we'll start the grant process all over again. The next batch of grant applications will probably be for the larger buses. But for the first 10, we felt this was the greatest need.
Okay. All right, so are there any more comments or questions? All right, then, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Recommend approval of a contract with the Schrader Group for architectural services for the Knapp Elementary School renovation and class addition project as per the attached.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Ramich and seconded by Mrs. Prokowski. Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Recommend approval of the 2019-20 Montgomery County Intermediate Unit budget. North Penn's share of the budget is $211,747.
Do I have a motion?
Second.
I'm sorry, was that you, Jenna? Or- Motion by Mrs. Ott and seconded by Mr. McBain. Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Recommend the award of a contract to the Schrader Group for professional design services to replace the roof at Nash Elementary School in the amount of $32,716.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Fusco and seconded by Mrs. Ramich. Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Recommend the award of a contract to Architera to study the possibility of adding synthetic turf to the varsity baseball and softball fields at North Penn High School in the amount of $3,900.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motioned by Mr. McBain and seconded by Mrs. G. Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Recommend the award of a contract with Snyder Hoffman Associates Incorporated for the professional design services to replace the library rooftop unit at Pembroke Middle School in the amount of $7,800.
Do I have a motion? Motion by Mrs. Ramich and seconded by Mr. Fusco. Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Recommend approval for the additional medical examiners for the 2018-19 school year as per the attached.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Prokowski. Do I have a second? Second. Seconded by Mr. Fusco. Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Recommend the approval of an amended 5-year contract with First Student Incorporated for student transportation services as per the attached.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Motion by Mr. McBain and seconded by Ms. Ott. Any comments or questions?
Just one, Mr. Skrocki, is there like an opt-out on anybody's part for this 5-year contract?
There's language in for default, but there's no option years per se. It's a 5-year agreement.
Okay,
So we'll run for 5 years in the absence of any default.
okay.
Is this comparable to what we are currently contracted with them?
In terms of the price,
In terms of the number of runs, is it the same?
great question. It's the exact same number of runs we have now.
So we
It is.
didn't, they're not taking it over any other runs from
No.
our current.
No, there's a provision in the agreement, though, that is in the current agreement that says that if we do have a vacancy due to retirement or resignation, that we may offer that public school run to first student. So that language has been in the contract now. I think we're in our 4th year for that. So that language remains. So if there's an individual that retires, full-time individual that may be benefited, we may offer that run to first student in the future. And if they are able to accommodate it, we would transfer that run to first student at that point.
We may offer, right?
We
We
may,
don't have
correct.
to. We're not required.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Dr. Dietrich, how would that typically, how would we know that? Would that be something, because typically in personnel report, if a bus driver were to retire, we would see a bus driver on personnel to replace them, but how would we, like, where would that come up at?
How would the board know if there was a retirement or a resignation and the first student was afforded that opportunity?
Yeah.
That
just
could be
how-
done electronically through, our email system to tell you. It would depend on timing, of course, also. So sometimes we get very abrupt, resignations, there's an issue, usually a health matter, or perhaps there's an abrupt resignation. Other times we have notice. So we could tell you, electronically.
Any other comments or questions? All right, so all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Recommend the purchase of a mass notification system from Alertus in the amount of $53,166.60.
So, second.
Motion by Ms. Ott and seconded by Mr. Fusco. Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Approval, or recommend approval of the personnel items as per the attached.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Do I have a second?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Fusco and seconded by Mrs. Prokowski. Any comments or questions?
I'd like to make public notice, I've been speaking with our solicitor. One of the candidates for the positions listed here is the spouse of my immediate supervisor at Upper Dublin High School. While there is no conflict of interest, I wanted to make sure that I would abstain from this vote to ensure that there was not even the appearance of a conflict of interest.
Thank you, Mr. McBain. Are there any other comments or questions?
I will also be abstaining from the vote.
Okay. All right, then, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, still have enough. Motion carries?
Carries, it's 5.
Yeah.
Okay. And with that action, we did approve the interim curriculum supervisor position to be filled by Jackie Giamarco. Jackie's in the audience, so Jackie, give a little wave there, and you can, meet Jackie after the meeting. The next item is in regard to the 2019-20 preliminary budget, and we recommend approving the budget of the preliminary general fund budget for 2019-2020 totaling $275,999,328, and authorize the administration to apply for exceptions from the Act 1 tax limitation for which the district is eligible per the attached resolution.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Motion by Mr. Fusco and seconded by anyone?
Second.
Mrs. J, okay, sorry. All right. Any comments or questions?
I think it should be noted that this preliminary budget takes into account, as Mr. Scrocky says in many previous finance meetings, a worst-case scenario that we'll be working to make better as time goes on.
And we're not taking the exceptions, we're simply
Leaving it open
continuing, leaving it open
as an
to-
option.
Right.
Correct.
All right. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
That concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Dietrich. Moving on then to the treasurer's report. Mr. Scrocky.
Thank you, Madam President. A couple quick notes. We did review the governor's budget proposal for the 2019-20 year. A couple quick highlights. For the basic education funding, the governor is proposing an increase for North Penn School District in basic funding of $510,000. That's about a 4.82% increase. So that is certainly welcome news. Hopefully that budget will stick. On the special ed side, it is a mere 1.85% increase, $121,000 approximately for the special education increase. So by all accounts, through our professional trade organization, PASBO, they seem to feel that this is going to be an easy budget process because there are no tax increases included in the governor's proposal. So we're hopeful that the budget will be passed by the end of June. Okay, so definitely good news on the basic education funding amount of a 4.82% increase. Our tax rebate program, just a quick update where we're at with that. We have 320 tax rebates that have been issued so far this year, totaling $25,495. And at the March Finance Committee meeting, we will be bringing another discussion to the table regarding the 2019-20 program, so we can bring that to closure in terms of any enhancements the board might want to consider with that program. In terms of the treasurer's report, this report is through the month of January 2019. Cash receipts in January totaled $3.6 million, and disbursements in January totaled $16.8 million. So obviously a negative cash flow for the month of January. Total funds that we had available at the end of the month were $154.7 million. That's about a $6.6 million increase over the same time last year. So I recommend that we accept the treasurer's report for January 2019.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mrs. Prokowski and seconded by Mrs. Ramich. Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, next item is budget transfers. I'm recommending that we approve budget transfers for the month of January in the amount of $574,957.63.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Fusco and seconded by Mrs. Ramich. Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, next item is sanction and approval of invoices. I recommend ratification of disbursements for the month of January in the amount of $19,956,589.39.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Prokowski and seconded by Mr. McBain. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
And finally, we do have the financial reports for your review through the month of January. We also had those as part of the Finance Committee, and I did provide some commentary on those reports. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Someone else to take a motion. All right. Does anyone have any comments or questions? Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Scrocky.
Thank you.
All right, moving on then to other business. Does anyone have any additional topics that they would like to discuss? Seeing none, okay. Moving on then to the second option for audience of citizens. Is there anyone from the audience of citizens who would like to speak tonight? Seeing none, I will move to adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much.